Welcome to the deep dive. You ever notice how we're kind of taught, maybe not directly, but it's in the air, right? That real intelligence, it wears the robe, gets the diploma, and it hangs out mostly in universities and colleges. Like, that degree on the wall is, well, it's supposed to be the ultimate proof of being smart.
Yeah, society really seems to put academic achievement on this pedestal.
Yeah.
Titles, publications.
Yeah.
That's the gold standard for intellect, supposedly.
And this is what's so interesting and what the stuff we're looking at today really digs into. There's this huge contradiction, isn't there?
It really is.
If intelligence is fundamentally about solving problems, then why are so many really effective problem solvers, the ones changing things, often found way outside of any classroom?
Exactly. And that's pretty much our mission for this deep dive. We're going to challenge that bias, that deep-seated idea that a degree automatically equals genius.
Right.
It's not about knocking education, let's be clear on that.
No, not at all.
But it is about rethinking what intelligence actually looks like. Looking beyond just the grades and the formal stuff. We want to explore how it shows up in action, in adapting, inventing, especially when we look at entrepreneurs.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. The material we're working from makes this really key point right up front. It says, true intelligence is not information storage, it is applied understanding.
Applied understanding, I like that phrasing.
Yeah, so it's not just about cramming facts in your head, it's about what you do with what you know, or maybe even what you don't know yet. It's the difference between, say, owning a cookbook and actually being able to cook a great meal, right?
Precisely. And what's really fascinating is how the analysis breaks down and what that applied understanding involves.
Yeah.
It's things like recognizing patterns when everything seems like chaos, making good calls when you're facing uncertainty, solving actual real-world problems, often, without a lot of resources to back you up.
Right, working with what you've got.
Exactly. And adapting super quickly when things change unexpectedly. And maybe the biggest one, building systems, building something new where there was nothing before. Imagine someone just seeing the connections in a mess.
And when you put it like that, it really draws a sharp line, doesn't it? Entrepreneurs, well, that's their daily reality. They live in that messy, problem-solving space.
They absolutely do. They're the ones doing, building, adapting constantly. Academics often are studying these things, maybe from a bit of a distance.
Analyzing it.
Right. A degree often shows you're good at navigating a very structured system. Follow the rules, pass the exams, understand the established theories. There are clear steps.
Yeah, there's a syllabus for life, almost.
Kind of. But the real world.
Yeah.
It doesn't hand you a syllabus. It throws, like the analysis says, ambiguity at you.
Right.
Risk. Resistance you didn't expect. Flat out failure. And that environment. That's where this other kind of intelligence, this entrepreneurial applied intelligence really comes into its own.
Yeah. Okay, so if that applied intelligence is so valuable, so present in the real world, why do we still tend to put academics on that top intellectual shelf?
The material digs into this, right? It suggests a few key reasons. First up is institutional validation.
Ah, yes, the gatekeepers.
Exactly. Universities, colleges, they're seen as these official validators of knowledge.
Right.
And society, well, we tend to trust the titles, the letters after the name, maybe more than we trust the actual results someone gets in the world.
And tie into that, there's this powerful cultural legacy. Think about it. Historically, higher education wasn't for everyone. It was rare, often linked to the elite.
Status.
Yeah, so that prestige, that sort of inherited respect for academia, it lingers. It's almost automatic. Even if we don't consciously think about it, we're just sort of conditioned to see it that way.
And it's practical, too, in a way. There's the visible proof, a diploma, a degree certificate. You can frame it, hang it on the wall. It's there.
Tangible, yeah. But entrepreneurial smarts, it's often invisible, isn't it? At least at first. Until the company takes off, or the invention works, or the problem gets solved in a way everyone can finally see. It's much harder to, display the messy process, the trial and error.
Failures along the way, yeah. Which is often where the real learning happens.
Absolutely.
And the last point the analysis brings up is really interesting. It's about language and formality. Academics get trained really rigorously in how to articulate complex ideas, structure arguments, present information clearly.
They're good with words.
They are. But here's the kicker. The source notes that clarity is not always intelligence. Often, it is the disguise of it.
Ooh, that's provocative.
It isn't it. It suggests that sometimes just sounding smart, using the right jargon, isn't the same as actually being smart in a practical, problem-solving sense. We can get wowed by the fancy language and forget to check if it actually leads anywhere useful.
Okay, that leads perfectly into this next idea, the intelligence of execution. I really like this part because it feels so real. The focus shifts to how entrepreneurs actually show this applied intelligence.
Right.
It says they don't just think, they build. They don't just analyze problems from afar.
They get in them.
Yeah, they dive right into the mess. And, crucially, they don't just rate theories about how things should work.
Yeah.
They actually test them. They pit their ideas against, the chaos of reality.
Yeah. And this points to a really specific, valuable set of traits. Things like being creative when the pressure is on, being incredibly resourceful when you have almost nothing to work with.
Yeah, finding ways.
Finding ways.
Yeah.
Being visionary when there are absolutely no guarantees it'll work out. Trusting your gut, your intuition when you don't have all the data. Being strategic,
Yeah.
even when everything is unpredictable.
Those sound like superpowers sometimes.
They almost are. And the material stresses, these aren't just abstract personality points. They are, and I'm quoting here, the building blocks of civilizations, industries, and cultural revolutions. Think about the innovator, maybe self-taught, who just sees a problem and makes something happen.
Against all odds, often.
Against all odds. And like you said earlier, what's so powerful is that you find these incredible qualities in people who might have no formal academic credentials, only an unshakable drive to solve problems that matter.
That's the intelligence that actually moves the needle, that
Yeah.
shapes the world around us, which leads us to what the source calls the hidden arrogance of the degree. It's a strong phrase.
It is.
And it challenges that core assumption head on. It says, to assume a person is intelligent because they hold a degree is no different than assuming a person is wise because they're old.
Wow.
It might be true, but it's definitely not a rule.
And think about the consequences of believing it is a rule. This bias, even if it's subtle, can end up marginalizing people. The innovators who learn by tinkering and doing.
Right.
The problem solvers who just don't fit that academic mold. The leaders who are out there acting while others are maybe still refining the theory. It can shut out brilliant people just because their brilliance doesn't have the right label.
It creates what the analysis calls a dangerous illusion. This idea that intelligence needs that external stamp of approval from an institution. But the argument is that often the most valuable intelligence is the kind that actually defies institutions, that breaks the old patterns and rebuilds things from the ground up. It's the intelligence that asks why not, instead of just accepting that's how it's done.
So where does that leave us in terms of measuring or recognizing intelligence? The material really pushes for a fundamental shift. We need to stop, it argues, confusing education with intelligence.
Okay, so they can support each other.
Absolutely they can. And a degree definitely shows something discipline, a certain level of knowledge. But they're not the same thing. That's the key distinction.
So for you listening, what this really means is maybe starting to ask different questions when we're trying to figure out who's smart, who's capable, instead of defaulting to, so where did they go to school? What degrees? Maybe we should ask.
What is this person actually solving?
Yeah. What problems are they tackling? And what have they built or changed or contributed? Something tangible.
And maybe most importantly, how do they think under pressure? Not just how they perform on a test or on paper.
Yeah. How do they handle things when it gets messy?
Exactly. That's the real test drive for applied intelligence. Seeing someone navigate that uncertainty and actually find solutions.
Because, in the end, it seems to circle back to this really powerful redefinition. Intelligence is not what you know. It's what you can do with what you don't know.
That really sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So just to recap the main idea from this deep dive.
Yeah.
Look, academics aren't less intelligent. That's not the point. But they aren't automatically more intelligent either, just because of the degree. The analysis is really nudging us all to broaden our definition, to look beyond those traditional markers.
Yeah, it's about giving you, our listener, a kind of new lens, a different way to look at people and their capabilities. So next time you're wondering who's really smart, maybe don't just glance at the wall for a degree. Look for the impact.
Look at what they're doing, what they're creating.
Exactly.
And maybe a final thought to chew on this week, something the source hints at. The really groundbreaking minds of the future, they might not all be coming out of lecture halls.
Right.
They might be in workshops or buzzing around in co-working spaces, or maybe it's even, a teenager tinkering with a prototype in their garage.
So keep that open mind. Look around you. Notice the problem solvers, the builders, the adapters, wherever they might be.
Yeah.
You might just be surprised where real intelligence is quietly changing the world.